Hello and happy August. It is 12 hours before my surgery begins. So I thought I would can't even talk, share a reflection now before, I mean, maybe I'm not going to want to talk for a couple of days afterwards. And I say that because I'm sort of preparing for the worst. I went into deciding to have the surgery, thinking like, oh, this is not going to be a big deal. And then and partly because I had read a lot of good, positive stories about how things went, how important it was for people to have had it, etc. How glad they were, even if there were sort of bouts of pain. And then I talked to people who I knew in my life who had had it or a similar surgery, and like there were some horror stories. And I think my situation will, in general, be better because I have a lot more things sort of going for me in terms of where I'm having it done. Y'all probably don't care about this. Anyway, I was going in with very like low expectations for the pain and for the time of recovery. And then, as part of my Master of Lenormand training that I'm doing with the World Divination Association, I decided to look at the month ahead and health, surgery, pain, just like debilitation, loss of strength, loss of power, requiring, I'll get into some of the themes later, but like I was looking at this forecast and it was just like so much bleaker. I mean, some of like the worst possible combinations. I sort of thought like, is the surgery going to kill me? Even though it shouldn't. Like nothing about it should suggest that in the actual working of it. Like it's very straightforward. The only sort of scary thing is the general anesthesia and, the complications that can happen with a paper cut, right? If it goes badly. And so that sort of like knocked the wind out of my sails a little bit. Um, And, just since this is a mystic blog, like I did a lot of energy clearing, like several hours worth, because I like read in, whenever you get bad news with Lenormand, you're supposed to confirm it, right? Like, oh, okay, this could just be sort of like a one-off. It could be different ways of interpreting it, even though, again, like really, really bad placements of cards. And like everything just kept confirming like bad. Not necessarily like you're gonna die, but like this is not good. It's gonna be really difficult. You're gonna be really sort of disempowered by this, which was a phrase that I didn't fully. I mean, I'm saying it's a phrase. The cards aren't speaking. I didn't hear the phrase, but like that was the sense that I got, and I was not fully appreciating the the message behind the message, as it were. So I did this energy clearing. I felt like, oh, okay, there was some like funky stuff that was external to me, as well as some stuff that was internal to me that was really skewing the reading itself. And so, I slept on it. I then decided actually, I think I slept on it, then did another reading. It was just as bleak. And then did the energy clearing. And the grounding and all of the stuff much more so than I would normally do. I normally don't need to. I feel like I have good spiritual hygiene. This suggested otherwise. And so, then I went with a different deck. I had gone with a couple of different decks just to think like, oh, is it the imagery that's really making me sort of pessimistic about this? Um, and then I went with a different one, and I felt better going into it. Like I felt as though I had sort of shifted my own fate. And I had actually drawn this is because I had drawn the Weaver from the Threads of Fate. It's kind of an oracle deck. Um, and decided like, wait, like why am I just sort of letting this pessimistic outlook be the outcome? Right? Like, oh, it felt so certain because I was getting it, I was getting it, I was getting it. I was like, wait a minute, I am a fate weaver, like I can change. Now that I know what's coming, I can sort of work. around that. And hopefully, knock on wood, I'm not sort of, my hubris is not getting to me in that way. But thinking about like this is a tower year for me. Chiron is opposed to Pluto. Mars is conjunct Mars. Like it's Mercury retrograde. Lots of stuff is probably not ideal for this, but for practical life, like it is the best possible time for me to do this. Work, personal life, all of that stuff. Um, and so I had to sort of sit with, okay, what am I hoping to get out of reading into this situation again? And it was much better. And it was very much, um, I looked at sort of the longer picture, right? Not just the immediate. So like, okay, show me 12 months. What does that, what does that prediction look like? And it was like, everything's going to be fine in this early stage. Like things are going to be good later. Like, but there is just some stuff that you have to go through and you were not prepared for what it was like. So you sort of needed like a slap in the face from the divination gods to be like, you need to treat this more seriously. And so, I got many more, um, more supplies, took more time off from work, have tried to prepare more than I might have otherwise for this Patreon. Um, have let people know who I'm going to be coaching with. Like, look, it could not be good. And so I may need to postpone our sessions and stuff like that. So, you know, this is a cautionary tale, but also a practical application when you're doing predictive readings, particularly when you have stuff going on that you know is not great. Um, it can look bleak, and then what do? You have to figure out, okay, am I going to not go through with this, which is a viable option. For me personally, I felt like if I canceled this sort of last minute, right before I think I had already sort of prepaid for the surgeries. It was like a day or so after I had done that, or before I had done that. And I could say, like, you know what, I'm going to back out, I'm going to cancel. I'm totally allowed to do that. It's a minor penalty. Um, but then I've sort of felt like if I do that, am I going to be living life in fear, right? Scared of what I see, which is the diviner's dilemma in a lot of senses, particularly the predictive diviner, right? You can divine for things that are more internal, permanent, ongoing, whatever, that are less sort of fatalistic in this way. Um, but that is the risk of the fortune teller, right? Like, uh-oh, what if we see something and all of a sudden we're like terrified to look anymore? And so that's where this idea of like fate weaving and why that's been so important to how I've approached divination. It's like, okay, we have the information, now what? Right? It's not an exclamation point, period, you know, end of story. Life continues. You can make changes to some extent, and again, hopefully I don't die tomorrow during the surgery, or I'm like forever disabled in some significant way. But the story that I needed to hear from the cards was like, this is going to be really bad, and you are going to lose a sense of power. And I'm very bad at asking for help. I'm very bad at being dependent on other people. I have a wonderful partner who is more than willing to help out in any way possible. And I refuse to ask for that help almost like to an not almost to an actually absurd degree. Like I can blame it on my Capricorn South Node, my Saturn in Libra, but it's something that I sort of have to overcome. And so I think for me, this is my sort of big tower moment, um, where a sense of who I am and how I've done things like kind of has to go away because if I do my normal bullshit, like this is going to be a really bad, painful process. But if I accept the help, if I take the steps to like not grind and work through the pain and all of the stuff that I normally do, if I don't try to get back into the gym right away, um, and it's like killing me to know that based on these forecasts, like I am not going back to the gym for another month. as opposed to like the 2 weeks that I'd sort of hoped for it. And that is very challenging and will be honestly quite hard for me to actually follow through on. And so I needed this, like, no, no, like this could be bad. So with all of that said, I have been sort of preparing ahead. I mentioned that I had a little oopsie in the Journal of Threads with week 3, ironically, the week of the regulator, where I sort of miscategorized the days and then based on the days as opposed to my like overarching spreadsheet of how all the threads are supposed to work, based on the visuals that I had put into the journal. I sort of like coded them, if you will. So rather than coming up with new exercises and things like that, which I just don't really have the bandwidth to do mentally or otherwise, I decided to update the overview. So there's a little bit of repetition in weeks 2 and 3 on certain days, something I have never done in more than a year. Um, that I've been doing this, where you would have the same combination of thread colors and planetary day in the same month. I have like a big tracking document that's very annoying to keep track of, so that that does not happen. But I made it happen. Mercury retrograde, traveling, lots of excuses for why it happened. But you live, you learn. Um, what else is on my thing to talk about? If you've been looking at the message of the moment, you know that I've been using the book lover Lenorical again. I'm just having so much fun with that concept deck. I truly do not know that I will ever do anything with it. There's so much stock photography that I've used, that I just don't want to pay the rights for to actually have to do it. And I could do sort of my own version, but so much of modern book covers are photography based. There's a lot of public domain stuff in there as well, and a lot of my own creations, either clearly arty or more like designy, where I've manipulated a lot of things. But it's been really fun to work with that energy, particularly as I'm getting back into and expanding my Lenormand practice. But just, I really like it. I just like books. I like the Lenorical concept. I feel like it's solid. Um, but yeah, to actually make it into a deck where it doesn't feel either sort of like a bunch of badly designed self-published books, um, or where it doesn't feel like everything sort of, you have no idea whose library this is. Like, who is this person who has such a weird variety of book covers? And I also don't want all of them to feel the same. I want them to be legible, but they're going to be small cards. So, like, there are lots of practical things that make it a weird concept to try to create. So I'm not in a hurry to do that, but I am having a lot of fun just creating the concept art. And sometimes there's not a lot involved in creating the concept art because it's like a photo and some typography. But like the tower, which is tomorrow, the tower is usually good in Lenormand. I was like, whew, when I did that message of the moment for tomorrow, I was like, this, I wanted to see this positive standing. Like I really like that cover, and I felt like that was fun play with the typography. You will see it very soon if you haven't already. Um, but yeah, so all of that, this August, at the end of the month, I put it at the end even before I knew about the surgery, just to give myself some breathing space. We have the last of the summer session workshops. This is on archetypes, masks, and personas. So it's sort of like a psychological, personal, professional development use of mystical concepts and psychological concepts to sort of tap into different aspects of yourself within yourself. If you've read Awaken the Court cards or taken that class, it's more so in the book than it is in the class. But that concept of awakening the court cards is deeply tied into this idea of the personas of the court. Um, those of you who have done coaching with me, we sometimes tap into archetypes as foci. Um, it ties into what we did in the workshop in July with the mystical foci. Um, and so, yeah, I'm excited for it. Hopefully, everything is fine by then, so it's not a problem to do it. I have another workshop that I'm doing the week before for the tarot diagnosis symposium group, um, which should be fun. And then September 22nd is the start of the fall semester. I know I'm jumping way ahead, but by the end of August, the early bird discount that I offer will no longer be sort of active. So if you're interested in the Semester of Divination with all of its live classes, all of its workshops, all of its tarot webinars, which are new this year, and the office hours, like if you have the time and capacity to really dig into all of these sort of cross modality concepts, you know, I think it's a really good value for everything that you get. And it's sort of like a graduate level divination program for one semester. It's a lot to sort of keep up with, but of course, you have recordings, you can take bits and pieces here and there. The classes sort of reinforce concepts within a semester, but then also semester to semester. We sort of build off of those. The new thing this year is that there is no repetition between fall and spring. So there is some repetition of course concepts and some material from previous years, but most of it is going to be new or a new formulation of it. And the two semesters are totally different, not just in terms of workshops, but also um, the webinars and also the live multi-session classes. So there's a lot there. If you're curious about it, I will put the link in the description of this video or in this Patreon post. Um, but where's I going with this? Oh, but let me know if you have questions about it because I would love to talk about it with anyone who's interested and who has questions. But yeah, I mean, it can be a lot. And so if you can do it essentially self-paced if you just want to watch the recordings, but you'll miss out on some of the other benefits of like doing it in real time and seeing that interweaving of concepts between workshops, between classes, tapping into office hours, all of that stuff. What else? I recently did that shuffleomancy post um, inspired by poll results and lack of poll results to some extent, and what that got me thinking about. I will be working on a Nine of Swords spread because I've been in such a like Nine of Swords space with anxiety over this um, surgery. I haven't wanted to make it because I'm worried that it will be skewed and won't be what is needed as sort of like, you know, the anxiety of life right now. Um, so that is coming. I have my plan for what the Psychic Explorer, Exploring Your Psychic Landscape workbook will be for those who have been with me from the beginning. And so you're getting the latest workbook and audio visualization. That is going to obviously be late. I haven't released it today, which is when I would normally release it. And I'm not going to be working on it for a couple of weeks. I know that. But I do know what it is. So it's not just like I'm waiting for inspiration. It's just timing is bad. Um, what else? Oh, just some things I've been thinking about. I've had a lot of nostalgia over sort of like simpler times. I went through all of my emails, not all of them, my orders through my shop from 2019 when it opened through I think 2022 or 2023 because I realized like, oh my God, there's so much personal information stored in my email. And I have, lots of like multi-factor authentication, all that good stuff. So it's secure, but like if for some reason it wasn't, or someone needed to access it for whatever reason, like there's just too much stuff that I do not need anymore. So I was going through all those and as I went, I was like, oh, I'm curious, like, you know, who is this order? What did they get? I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that reading. Oh, I know that person. Okay, like that was a book, whatever. I'm not really going to think about that because I wasn't involved deeply in the interaction itself. But it was a transaction, it wasn't a sort of transformational experience. But going back through, I was like, wow, I really offered Julia a $10 one card reading. Like, wow, I really did. And it took like an hour and a half, 2 hours. I think that particular reading Um, it was like 2,000 words. Like it was obscene for one card. And not to say that there's not a lot to get out of one card, but like it was $10 and it probably took me all evening. It was like all of my free time in one night to do that reading. And then I probably, because it was early days, like spent a lot of time revising and editing and making a template for where I'd actually put the written reading. I don't usually do written readings anymore for this reason. Um, because I just overdo it. But it got me thinking, like, why can't I do a $10 one card reading for people? So I threw that up on my Instagram. I had a bunch of people opt in, send me a little $10 request through PayPal. So I'm offering that to whoever's watching this. Um, if you didn't already get that, if you're already in coaching with me, like just ask for the one card reading. I'm not going to ask you to pay me more money. You're already paying me money. Um, for patrons, you all are getting a good deal. So if you're not also in coaching and other things, like uh, I will ask that you pay that if you want a one card reading. But it's like a 5 minute audio recording or a 250 word reading, just short and sweet, not digging into all of the symbolism like I once upon a time did. But they've proved really effective given that I'm about to go into surgery in now 11 and a half hours. Um, I'm not going to be doing that soon. It'll be probably 2 weeks before I get to it at the earliest. I'm going to be on painkillers. I don't want to mess with that and try to read through, opiates or whatever. Um, but yeah, I wanted to make sure that you knew if you're not on Instagram that that is open to you. I just realized I did not send out my newsletter, so I have to do that before I go to bed tonight. Yeah, we have the full moon on Saturday. Uh, yeah, the only other note that I have that I was gonna talk about was once upon a time, I had planned to do 7 tiers, so one tied to each of the planets. You may or may not be able to figure out which ones are already in play, but the sun and the moon are not. So those were originally going to be like a mystic sort of healer tier. I ended up making the Hermit's Book of Moon spread, so I didn't, some of that would be redundant with what I wanted to do in the mystic, but it was going to be more like monthly sort of healing sessions, mediumship work, perhaps, but I didn't really have a good concept of it. Whereas creator would be tied to the sun and tied to actually working on creative projects, creative mentoring, stuff that I'm still interested in doing and I can do through coaching, but doesn't feel like the right time, sort of with the current global marketplace and the US marketplace in particular, where most of you all are, to do that. So I haven't introduced those. If either of those things sound interesting to you, they would be higher tier memberships because they're more energy and time intensive, which is another reason like we're not like booming with paid members, so I don't need to sort of reach higher and higher in that way. But if there is that interest, let me know. Not even necessarily for Patreon, but of setting something up for personal coaching or just sort of being able to book sort of regular healing type energy work type sessions because I do that work, but I do so many things that I don't list them all, and it gets lost. And I was going back through my astrological placements. It's like I really need to lean more on all of the like Taurus, uh, Chiron, Selena stuff that I have going on. That is really good for sort of the actual true like healer work. Something that I've always sort of been uncomfortable with as a title for legal and spiritual shadow work baggage from um, problematic spiritual leaders and healers in my life in the past. But that's enough about that. This has been very long and pretty much mostly unrelated to Patreon, just more stuff that I've been going through. But I hope that it has been helpful, particularly the sort of predictive forecasting, um, to sort of see what you do with that with a real example, and then just to give you some updates. So that's all. Done rambling. I hope everything goes well tomorrow morning and that I am back in, your feed soon with fresh content instead of batched content. I'll talk to you later.